Bonjour à tous. Hi you all. I am Franck Avis, President of the FACC, French American Chamber of Commerce of Texas. Welcome today for our annual meeting. Unfortunately, we all did online this time again, but things are getting way better. So we can now imagine that from now on, we'll set up in-person events, and I look forward to seeing you all soon in person. As usual, and as asked by our bylaws, so the agenda today is dedicated to a vote by the members to renew the FACC board for 1 year and to share information about financials and activities. A chat room is open for your questions. But let me start this meeting by a short statement about the FACC. After a tough year 2020, we are now at half year 2021, and the situation of the FACC is good. Our financial situation is sound. Our activities are numerous and attractive. And we are expanding our reach throughout all Texas. If we have gotten through the crisis, it is thanks to you, corporate and individual members. Thanks to your continuous support in a harsh period for everybody. Also, I'd like to point out the wonderful job done by the team during this period. So sincerely, thanks again to you all for your support. We need it, and thanks again. So now, before rolling out the business agenda, we are highly honored to propose a keynote about the Texas Triangle with two prominent speakers, Secretary Henry Cisneros and Alexis Andres, Consul Général de France. The conversation is going to be moderated by our friend John Eldridge. John is a pillar of the French American community in Houston. He's tied to France by his marriage and also his passion for the French art de vivre and the French culture. He is a partner at Haynes and Boone in Houston, an expert for 40 years in environmental law. He also serves in many boards, including RICE, and is the chair of the FACC board. Merci, cher John. Thank you very much, John, for your support and your deep commitment to our community. And I leave you the floor for the conversation.
Well, thank you very much, Franck, and welcome to all of the FACC members and our guests. It's great to be here, even though here is remote, as it must be for the near future. But in short order, we'll be meeting in person again, which we all look forward to. As Franck mentioned, it's been a difficult year in many ways, 15 months during the pandemic, but we've come through with flying colors, actually, thanks to the dedication of our staff, our board, which is a very engaged board, I must admit, and to the corporate sponsors who have supported us during this time. We'll get to the financial results later, which are quite solid, improving. We have a lot of good news, actually, and so it's terrific to be involved with the French American Chamber of Commerce as we move from the FACC Houston into the FACC Texas mode. So we are expanding, we're improving, and things are looking better than ever, frankly. So today we're going to talk a bit, or two keynote speakers will enlighten us a bit about the so-called Texas Triangle. And for many people on the call, of course, they have heard that and understand that. For some, it may be a new concept. So the question might be, why would we focus on the Texas Triangle? Why would we have that be a featured topic for the French American Chamber of Texas? Well, this is a conceptual construct that captures key aspects of Texas, and in particular, in my view, the future of Texas. You can see it happening in this region, in central Texas, the heart of Texas. The four key cities of San Antonio, Houston, Dallas, and Austin are driving so many of the important things of Texas. The demographics, the economy, the politics, the transportation initiatives, the housing initiatives, the medical and social progress. All of this is concentrated in this particular region, which has obtained the moniker the Texas Triangle. Thus, for the business community, and that's what we are, we're primarily a business supporting organization and networking organization. For the business community in Texas, and frankly, for many of the businesses in France who do business in Texas, this particular Texas Triangle region is crucial. It's an opportunity. It's necessary to understand it if you're going to understand where your business future may lie, where your opportunities are. So the insights that we will hear from Secretary Cisneros and from Consul General Andres are going to help us understand what the triangle consists of, what the challenges are, and what what it tells us about the future and the opportunities for Texas as a whole. As mentioned, we're honored today to have Secretary Henry Cisneros of San Antonio join us as a keynote speaker. For most Texans, Secretary Cisneros is a household name. People are quite familiar with him due to his illustrious past as a multiple-term mayor of San Antonio, a leader in Texas politics, and then Secretary of Housing and Urban Affairs under President Bill Clinton. Since that time, Secretary Cisneros has been very engaged in civic and business affairs of a great multitude, too many to mention here today. Some of those will come out in his remarks, perhaps, but certainly his depth of experience related to the business, political, and social worlds is hard to match. And so we certainly look forward to hearing from him about the Texas Triangle and the connections with France and French companies. We're also extremely happy to have our friend and fellow board member, Consul General Alexis Andres, to join us as the other keynote speaker. We all know him. Many Texans know and admire him for his dedicated 4 years of work in Texas. He has been a model board member and supporter of the chamber, for which we thank him. He has a long and deep diplomatic career that has taken him to Vietnam, to Africa, to Berlin, and then most recently to Houston for the past 4 years. Our loss is that he's going to be returning to France to continue his diplomatic career there. We hope that he returns often and that he joins the French-American Chamber of Commerce when he does come back to Houston. So these are our two great speakers. We look forward to hearing their insights. And I think that our audience will gain ideas about how they can pursue their business interests and succeed by focusing and understanding the Texas Triangle. Without further ado, Secretary Cisneros, perhaps you would like to make some remarks, and feel free to offer additional points of introduction if you'd like to.
John, thank you very much for your kind introduction. And thank you, more importantly, for your leadership of the French-American Chamber of Commerce of Texas. Very important that Texas be represented on the global scene. France is, of course, a supremely important country to the United States and to Texas. And you're keeping those bonds strong and building upon them and creating new opportunities, which translate into jobs and incomes, is the right thing to do. So thank you for going beyond your work at Haynes and Boone to provide this kind of civic leadership. Thank you. I had the pleasure of meeting Alexis Andres when he accompanied the ambassador recently from France on a tour of Texas. They visited San Antonio to help open a French company called Cuisine Solutions that will be feeding people on airlines and in other food environments, bringing a taste of French cuisine to those settings. And so it was an honor to meet him then, and honored to sit with him and be part of today's session. Congratulations to Frank Avis in sustaining this chamber. And thank you all for inviting me here. Thank you also to all who are members of the French American Chamber of Commerce. You understand the significance of healthy, robust international connections for Texas. Thank you for that. And thank you for the economic power that this relationship entails. We know that more and more relationships between countries are really relationships between markets. And the connection between the Houston area, for example, but all of Texas to Paris and Lyon and Marseille and other places in France is greatly important to our mutual progress. I became interested in the subject of cities in the global context when I was mayor of San Antonio. I'm a great admirer of Houston, obviously, undoubtedly one of the nation's most interconnected global cities. Air connections, energy connections, space connections, medical connections. It's sort of the prototypical city these days of what we're seeing across the world, which is cities that represent their countries in a global context. We see this all over the world now, places such as Tokyo and Yokohama, cities collaborating to create great metro regions, Milan and Turin in northern Italy, for example, and many other examples around the world. If you look at a map of the world today, I've seen a computerized map that shows the pinnacles of commerce in the world, and they are great metro areas, frequently metro areas collaborating together. In the United States, we know of the great megaplexes that are represented by the New York to Boston, rather Boston to New York to Philadelphia to Washington complex, which constitutes the Atlantic presence of the United States. On the West Coast, we go from Seattle to Portland to San Francisco to Los Angeles with a great Western aggregation. The American heartland is blessed with Chicago leading cities like Milwaukee and others in the industrial area of the country. But it's only been in the last 50 years or so that we have even had an inkling that the Texas cities, the great Texas cities, could cooperate and cumulatively provide such a presence on the world scene. I now will assert to you that based on these studies that went into this book, that I am certain that when we look at the great economic mega complexes in the world, the Texas Triangle, characterized by Dallas and Fort Worth on the north edge of the triangle, Dallas and Galveston on the southeastern part of the triangle, and Austin and San Antonio on the western part of the triangle constitute one of those global places. And I'll try to make the case in a few moments to that end. Let me just say first a word about the triangle as a whole. We define the triangle as the counties that surround the metros that I just mentioned. And it comes to 35 counties in Texas out of the 254 counties that are Texas as a whole. But just in those 35 counties, roughly 14% of the counties, is 66% of the population of Texas in those 35 places, and 85% of the growth in Texas. Equally importantly, they represent 77% of the state's gross domestic product, of the GDP of the state. So as John Eldridge said a moment ago, we're really talking about the future when we're talking about these economic engines that pull Texas. The legend of Texas is Texas of mythical open spaces and ranches and longhorns and oil wells. That's the popular belief, if you will, of the Constitution, the weight of Texas. And yet what is now clear, when 77% of the GDP is produced in the great metros of Texas, Texas is really an urban state. And more than urban, the Texas Triangle is the dominant force. And that's to be accepted. That's to be understood when we look at just exactly how large these metros are. There, right now in the United States, of the 10 largest cities in America, of the 10 largest in the country, 3 are in Texas: Houston, San Antonio, and Dallas, in that order, city population. Of the 15 largest, 5 are in Texas, because Austin is number 11 and Fort Worth is number 13. When the census of 2000 is finally counted and announced, Austin will almost certainly move into 10th place, displacing San Jose. And for the first time in American history, 4 of the 10 most populous cities will be within one state: Houston, San Antonio, Dallas, and Austin. The economic weight is also notable. 48 of the nation's 500 largest companies, Fortune 500 companies, 48, almost 10%, are in one state, and that is Texas. So the population weight, the economic weight, makes clear this is a major phenomenon now occurring. When you count up the GDP of those 35 counties that I mentioned surrounding this triangle, they would be together in economic weight the 15th largest nation economically in the world, larger than the economy of Indonesia or Turkey or Saudi Arabia or the Netherlands would be the Texas Triangle. And individually, these metros have standing in the world. The economy of Dallas-Fort Worth is larger than the economy of Sweden. The economy of the Houston area is larger than the economy of Belgium. The economy of Austin and San Antonio combined is an economy about the size of Egypt's. So even now, pictured on the world scene, these are substantial economic players. And when you get into the composition of what is happening in these places, you understand why. I mentioned earlier the composition of Houston's economic outreach, the energy industry, obviously, including not just traditional petroleum, but the technology for the renewables that are going to drive energy in the world, solar, wind, and other energy sources. Obviously, the medical center is the largest aggregation of medicine anywhere in the world, and advancing beyond clinical capability to the research that will support nanotechnologies and DNA-related work and gene splicing, all of these happening in great research facilities at the medical center. Beyond that, the space program and frankly, the ties of Houstonians to other parts of the world. There's several countries in the world whose largest population outside of that country is in Houston, like Nigeria, for example, which established those relationships because of the energy business. There's no question Houston is a special place in that respect, one of the most diverse cities anywhere in the world, with dozens of languages spoken and dozens of population centers of different populations. The Dallas-Fort Worth area is an aerospace center, a technology center, a banking center, and clearly a transportation center, with DFW playing the role that it does. That's the 9th largest city in the country and the 13th largest city in the country, separated by only 30 miles. Going down I-35, the other angle of the triangle, one comes first to Austin and then to San Antonio. Austin is the state's capital with the strong technology component. The University of Texas system, one of the finest public university systems in the country, fueling the research and work being done in the Austin area, with new biomedical capabilities sustained by Dell computers that it's set up the Dell Medical School, and other examples. Austin is catching up on the air routes with the growth at Bergstrom Airport that now connects Austin directly to London, Paris, Amsterdam, Frankfurt, and very soon the cities of Asia. San Antonio, 75 miles to the south. So once again, you have the 7th largest city in the country and the new 10th largest city in the country, separated by about a 70-mile corridor that is filling in with some of the largest small communities in the country, New Braunfels and San Marcos, and together about 4 million people. San Antonio's economy is based on biotechnology, cybersecurity. It is the most visited place in Texas by visitors in touristic and hospitality, the San Antonio River, the Alamo, et cetera, and many back office operations there. Just yesterday, a Japanese company announced that it's moving its U.S. headquarters to San Antonio in the manufacturing sector because of the large Toyota plant there that manufactures 240,000 Tundra and Tacoma trucks every year. So the power of the Texas Triangle is provable, and it will be, I think, a very important mutually supported framework for the future. Already, analysts at Texas A&M tell us that the connections between the cities of the Triangle are the #1 connections for those cities as against any other cities in the country. So they're more tightly bound than most cities in the country. There are other places in America where you have large cities relatively close, as New York and Philadelphia, for example, or Washington and Baltimore. But it's interesting, those places are in different states. This triangle is the only place where you have population centers of that mass and economic centers of that mass within the same legislative regime of a single state. And that could prove to be very supportive, because on decisions that need to be made into the future about infrastructure, such as roads and power and higher education and things like the high-speed rail that is projected to connect Houston and Dallas, well underway, already acquired about 50% of the right-of-way needed, and most of the federal and state authorities to build that. Let me just say a quick word in closing about two things. One is, while the story is important of the Texas Triangle, the rest of Texas is very urban as well. We have 25 standard metropolitan areas defined by the census as metropolitan areas in Texas, second only to California that has 26. So again, we think of Texas as wide open spaces and rural areas, but it has 25 defined metro areas, such as Midland, Odessa, El Paso, Laredo, Corpus Christi, Tyler, Texarkana, many others across the state. And then our rural areas will increasingly be connected to the large urban centers. In America today, one of the great divides is the divide between urban and rural areas. It's the red-blue break. It's political views, very divisive. But given the technologies that are emerging, like telemedicine, it will soon be possible to get the same kind of medical care one gets in the Houston Medical Center in smaller surrounding metropolitan areas or rural areas because of the connection through broadband and other infrastructures of that communications infrastructure. So these are, John, just some thoughts on what is coming. I think it clearly is important to people interested in the French-Texas connection. I will tell you from my field, which is in raising investment capital in infrastructure, I deal with French companies. A company called Meridiam is one of America's largest infrastructure players. It's French, headquartered in Paris, and a company called TKO, with whom my own company deals now, is named after a French possession in the Pacific, TKO, and is a major investor globally in infrastructure. I fully expect to see French companies participating in the economic growth of the United States And therefore, when they do their analysis in Texas and the Texas Triangle, because this is one of the fastest growing regions in America with strong in-migration from other places and keeping up with the latest technological innovations that will drive the economic future. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this, and I'm happy to stand by and take questions after Alexis speaks.
Thank you very much, Secretary Cisneros. We certainly will have a few questions we want to follow up on, but we're going to turn to the Consul General, Alexis Andres. And Alexis, would you please add some of your thoughts from your perspective as a leading French diplomat?
Thank you, John. Thank you, Secretary Cisneros. Listening to you, I could only remember this meeting you had with the ambassador in San Antonio, and at that time I was very impressed by your arguments. And in sort of response to your last words, indeed, I want to comment on why, given this description of the Texas Triangle, is France, in my opinion, still missing some of these opportunities? Or better said, why is Texas still suffering from a deficit of image, at least from the French side? And first, I'd like to say that the situation is not so dramatic, and France is already a key partner of Texas. Trade has increased 83% over 10 years. And it's $8 billion traded annually today. France's contribution to foreign direct investment projects in the past 10 years has been 7%. And regarding job creation, France's rating in Texas is above its rating in the entire United States. France is indeed the third largest foreign employer in Texas, with a 64,000 jobs created by French companies in 2020. For the entire US, France is the fifth largest foreign employer. Among the 250-ish French companies in Texas, 50 are major ones, and in key sectors: energy, aeronautics, healthcare, luxury, manufacturing, hospitality. And finally, the French community in Texas accounts for some 11,000 registered citizens, meaning probably the double live here. But something is not matching. Texas is usually not the first place French people think of to visit, to invest in, or to choose for their expatriation. But once they're here, they tend to stay. Second, prejudices toward Texas are long enduring. Blame the TV series Dallas, but that's not the only reason. Another example is that despite my predecessors and I sending detailed reports to the embassy or to our HQ about the importance of Texas economy, it took 9 years to have a new visit of a member of the French government. It occurred in January 2020 in Houston with the visit of our Minister for the Industry, Agnès Pannier-Runacher. And on the other side, in my 4 years here, I only saw Mayors Rawlings and Price travel to Paris. No other high-ranking official really wanting to do so except my dear friend Mayor Turner. But in the same time, India or China were top destinations for Texas officials. So, is it a question of bad or insufficient communication? I often tell my Texan friends that figures matter, but don't suffice to convince. I was very impressed in reading all the figures detailed in the Texas Triangle, but sometimes a charismatic leader or a colorful success story, however unfair that is, has more impact than figures. I would say forget Dallas, highlight Martha, and then invest in Dallas. It's a question of character. Texans are pragmatic and supporters of small government. French people are more fond of elaborated schemes and concepts and attached to a somewhat bigger government. That makes some French people very interested in Texas, but not the majority of them. Is it a difference of views on key issues such as climate change, urban development, wildlife, gun safety? I would say that it can make a difference, but not a divorce. And finally, is it a lack of mutual interest? I don't think so either, because you would be surprised by the number of square dance clubs in France, even in my small village in Alsace. And I don't need to describe the passion of so many Texans for French culture, heritage, and wine, n'est-ce pas, John? I would call it more an insufficient knowledge of our respective key assets to face today's common challenges, which, my dear John, I think will bring us to another aspect of our discussion, which is indeed the presence of some examples of French businesses that strive in Texas. And maybe I should reach that point before the Q&A, or how do you want to proceed, John?
No, please go ahead.
Because we have a number of French companies thriving in Texas, and Secretary Cisneros, thank you also for mentioning those French companies in infrastructures. I think it's obvious that French companies have and will continue to bring a decisive contribution to the sustainable development of the Texas Triangle. Let's take the example of the energy transition. French energy companies in Texas showcase the different path to the energy transition. We have Engie that has done the most decisive shift from gas to renewables only, adding to the IoT services that help reduce energy consumption. We have Total that just announced its new strategy and name, Total Energies. We have also all energy service companies, Schlumberger, Technip Energies, Valorec, and all of them have integrated their strategy the key asset of being a bridge between technologies already or soon developed in France and Europe and the needs of the US and global markets. And it's not just major companies, but also startups coming from the network of the French tech. If we move to Dallas, we can witness the powerful ecosystem developed around the aeronautics with Airbus Helicopter and the various Safran facilities. Dassault System is also adding to this with key technologies. And on another note, Dallas is also home to Patrick Esquer, the founder of La Madeleine, a true and inspiring French success story in Texas. Austin provides us with a different perspective, where successful entrepreneurs like Christophe Lavigne in the health sector now helps younger ones. The common point between Christophe and, for example, Folipop that is helping now, Christophe cured people with medical tools, and Folipop help cure people with French bakery. And that works as well. Since Austin is a tech city, I should also mention Thales, which has developed its technology to secure the credit card business. I wanted to end this description with San Antonio, and Secretary Cisneros, you mentioned Cuisine Solution, which is the first major investment in San Antonio for years, an investment of $200 million, creation of 800 jobs, made by the leader of the sous vide technology. So now, indeed, when you eat your favorite egg bite at Starbucks or delicious meals on airplanes, it has French flavor. If it has French flavor, it's because of Cuisine Solution. So I think France in Texas is already doing a lot. France in the Texas Triangle also, but we truly have to overcome some long-lasting prejudices, and we have to do to advocate day after day, month after month, year after year, the fact that France is still missing many opportunities in Texas.
Thank you very much, Secretary General. Let me start the questioning with one question for Secretary Cisneros. Given your deep experience not only in government and transportation, but also in business, including, the financial side or the capital side, what would be your advice, Mr. Secretary, for companies in the Texas Triangle and here I'm probably talking about the mid or smaller size companies who want to expand and utilize opportunities that are afforded by France. So, for example, there might be French technology or French partnerships or French opportunities that aren't available necessarily here or elsewhere. Do you have some advice for that set of companies? And the corollary would be, do you have advice for French entrepreneurs or smaller companies who want to get entree into the Texas Triangle?
My best advice stems from my experience as mayor in a working relationship with Japan. In 1986, as mayor, I started making an annual visit to Japan. And that was important, it was useful, but we really turned the tide when we made a contact in Japan with a woman who was knowledgeable with many of the major corporations and major families in Japan, and who began to serve as a kind of an intermediary for us. One person, she was a baroness with a Mitsui family background, who was interested in being a good citizen of the world and kind of adopted us as a city, to begin building up the relationship. She introduced me to the chairman of Sony, Dr. Morita. She introduced me to the chairman of Toyota, Dr. Toyoda. And the result was 16 years later, one of the largest automotive plants in the world, now located in San Antonio. So the point I'm making is there were two dimensions. The first was ubiquity, proximity, outreach, going both directions, creating relationships. You never know where they're going to go. And the second one was, I don't think it's possible to leave these relationships to serendipity. You know, somehow the good will come from a reception or a social engagement. There really needs to be someone sort of bringing people together and serving as the glue. Hence, the work of the economic section of the consular office in Houston from France would be one place I would go if I were in business, looking to do business in France. And also people who have a direct interest, who might serve as a contact, who know people. And that would be facilitated by something like the French Texas Chamber of Commerce. Someone with an interest in the relationship, in expanding the relationships and actually making connections. So much of economic progress in the world is about building relationships. And it's important to have those people who serve as the intermediaries, who serve as the glue. I would say that we also see the success that Spain has had in the United States with banks like BBVA here and Santander in the United States, and infrastructure companies like Sintra and others. It's almost as if it's been jokingly described as the Reconquista, the second conquest of Spanish explorers and entrepreneurs into the United States. So it takes aggressive, conscious, intentional outreach. But when that happens and we show the benefits of what's possible here, as well as what's possible in France, I think it's a natural that a growing dynamic region such as ours will do very well.
Thank you very much. And I'm sure that the listeners could quickly identify the role of the French-American Chamber of Commerce, as you mentioned, as a potential player in that kind of activity. And then, so this is a question, I guess, for both of our speakers. You know, there is such a large Latin population, Hispanic population in Texas, either you know, people who have immigrated or people who you know, are first, second, third, fourth, or 10th generation Texans. And so for the French entrepreneur or the French company that's coming to Texas or that's trying to expand in the Texas Triangle, what advice or insights might we have that would help a French company to understand and exploit and tap into that market or that population in a new and more successful, dynamic way?
I'll let Alexis go first. I'll be happy to follow him.
Thank you, Secretary Cisneros. I think this is a key question, given the demography of the Hispanic population, and also given the fact that this population is already used to be in this dual culture, its culture of origin and the American culture, and the links, the proximity with the French culture can also be an asset. I think one answer would be education. We also know that, and you mentioned it in your book, Secretary Cisneros, that education is a major issue because you give figures showing that especially public education is improving but still lagging behind other states. And I think this also has an impact on the Latino population. And in that field, France has an experience in using education as a tool to really have the workforce more implicated in the development of the company. And this is something that I think French companies are used to do, to support, for example, dual language programs for their employees, or some vocational training or intern training. And this could be, I think, a major asset for both indeed the
I think, at least on my screen, the Consul General froze.
Yeah.
Yes. So, Mr. Secretary, perhaps you had a response to the question.
Yeah, here's what I would say. The Hispanic population in the United States is the largest minority at 60 million people. And it is growing at such a pace that by the year about 2040 or so, 2045, it will be 100 million people, a quarter of the population in the United States. That means that in that period, the Hispanic population will virtually double. And this is not as a result of immigration, but as a result of natural growth from within the country. It is the fastest growing segment of the American population. And that means that in a free enterprise system that requires growth, that population is going to bring a lot of dynamism. It's a hardworking population, as we know. Just drive by a construction site in Houston and look at who's doing the constructing or who's doing the food production. And it's hardworking, also very entrepreneurial. Lots of small businesses. The fastest growing segment of small businesses in America is not the Latino population, it is Latinas, female entrepreneurs, starting everything from cosmetics businesses to hair businesses to food businesses to restaurants to bakeries to textile companies to shops. It's pretty interesting how entrepreneurial this population is. So it is really a blessing for our economy going forward, because they will be the next middle class. They're hungry, they're ambitious, and they will be the next backbone of the middle class. Now, if I were a French entrepreneur wanting to relate to this growth, I would recognize that there are Hispanic chambers of commerce that are very dynamic in most of the major cities. There's about 100 of them across the country. And there is a U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce that is very well plugged in. So that would be a place where I would start. Now, unfortunately, many of these businesses are small. So one would have to invest in the growth of a relationship, because very few of them are 500 or 1,000 employees. More likely they're smaller, and although there's some that are now converting themselves into chains. But it is a population worth reaching. It's going to be very important in the future of the country in terms of economic middle class. Probably not a lot involved in export businesses now, so probably not people who would invest into France at this point. But over the next decade and the next 25 years, for sure, many American cities are going to be transformed by just the sheer economic energy of the U.S. Hispanic community.
Thank you. Frank, did you have a question for the speakers?
Oh, thank you very much for all what you said, Secretary and Alexis. I wonder about the next infrastructure package to be voted. I think it is a big opportunity for French companies to propose their services in the U.S. I think about the infrastructures in energy, also in transportation.
Right.
So I do hope that this package will be voted soon, and that I hope French companies can get to grab some opportunities.
Well, I'm happy to report breaking news. I am talking to you on my computer, but I'm looking sideways to my television that I keep on CNN all day. And the president just stepped out of the White House with the bipartisan Senate group that has been working on infrastructure and announced a deal for what they're calling the largest infrastructure package in the country's history. That's a good start to have bipartisan support. There will be many difficult discussions ahead to bring everybody aboard to pass it, but we're going in the right direction. And you're completely right. France, in some respects, in ways, has better infrastructure than we do in the United States. We do not have one single mile of high-speed rail that compares to what exists in France, or for that matter, in Spain or China or Japan or other places. And then in power generation, France was well ahead of us in nuclear power, and as a result is better set for power generation. So I do believe there will be opportunities because we're going to enter what I'm going to predict a golden age of rebuilding the United States that begins with this infrastructure package, but then does a lot of other things, attracts private capital like the French companies that I just described earlier that raise global funds and invest them in infrastructure. I mentioned Meridium, I mentioned TKO, there are others. The French are well advanced in the concept of P3s, public-private partnerships. So I would say pass the word back to France that now's the time.
Thank you.
And add, Secretary Cisneros, I think there is also a huge challenge indeed in Texas, and you describe it in the Texas Triangle, which is the fact that for the time being, the only project of high-speed train is a bullet train between Houston and Dallas, and we clearly know this is insufficient given the perspectives of the development of the Texas Triangle. And I would strongly recommend that maybe some ideas developed by the SNCF Americas can be reconsidered, because
it's a good point. That the technology for the Houston Dallas line is going to be Japanese. Mitsubishi will have the equipment, but there's no reason why, as this goes forward, that French technology cannot be used in the Dallas to San Antonio line, for example, or the Houston to San Antonio line of the Triangle, not to mention other technologies, bus technologies, aircraft technologies. Airbus is present in the United States. It's a French collaboration, European collaboration. In an interwoven world, our economic destinies are tied together, and it's just a matter of who has answers, solutions, and energy to pursue.
That's fantastic. Well, Frank, I think we are about at the end of our allotted time for our keynote speakers. I want to extend sincerest, heartfelt thanks to Secretary Cisneros and to Consul General Andres for joining us and enlightening us on this very important topic. We appreciate your support. We appreciate your presence here at our annual meeting. Secretary Cisneros, I want to thank you for your career of service, especially to the public sector, but more recently the private sector. We know that you have accomplished a great deal that has benefited the nation as well as San Antonio and the state of Texas. So
thank you.
Best of luck to you, and you're welcome to stay. But if you have other things to do, we understand your departure.
Yeah.
Alexis, thank you again for presenting and for affording us the opportunity to have Secretary Cisneros join us as well. That's through your efforts, which are very much appreciated, and we look forward to the balance of the meeting. So with that, Frank and Constance, I'm going to turn the gavel back over to you, and we can proceed with the business segment of our annual meeting.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Keep up the good work.
Thank you very much, John, and thank you very much, Mr. Secretary and Alexis, for this thrilling conversation. And I encourage everybody to read this book about the Texas Triangle. Many things to learn and many insights to think about. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
So let me turn now to the first point at the business agenda today, which is the election of the FACC board. So the FACC members have just received an email on the address we know. It will be possible for you to vote through these emails. You will find the buttons, yes and no button, inside your email. So you'll see on the screen the presentation of the board. So the officers proposed, so John Eldridge as the FACC chairman, Mary-Hélène Ben-Samon as FACC secretary, Bill Collins from NG, CEO and CFO at NG North America as the FACC treasurer, and the board directors, the list of the board directors you'll find below. Just to mention, so many of the directors are people we know well. They are new members, new directors. So I mentioned Bill Collins from NG. So thank you very much, Bill, again for joining us at the chamber. That's a chance for us to having you. You may notice also the name of Bertrand Frischmann, who is the new CEO of Vallourec North America, and Bertrand is now in Houston too. And also the name of Ina Ivanova, Vice President at Crédit Agricole North America, and she's based in Houston. And also the name of Jean-François Rossi, Vice President for Technip Energy, which is the new company after the split of Technip FMC and Technip Energies in two separate companies. And Technip Energies is so now headquartered in Paris, but Jean-François is based in Houston. So I welcome again all these new members. So this is the new, so this is the list we propose to be approved by the annual meeting today. So this is the motion. Any second to this motion? John?
Yes, I second the motion.
Thank you very much. And so I call now for the vote. So you have your buttons on the emails. Yes, for approving. No if you disapprove. I suggest we wait a few to give you the time to vote. And I thank you, Constance or Leah, to tell me when you will see the results.
Yeah, I can see the votes are coming in. So far, it's 100%. So, but votes are still coming in. So maybe we can wait a little bit to share the final results in a few minutes.
Yeah. I look forward to having our next meeting in person, and for it will be better for the votes and better to raise a glass after the meeting.
Yeah, we almost reached the quorum.
Okay.
Okay, I think we are good. It's 100%.
Okay, thank you very much to all of you. So,
Congratulations.
Okay, congratulations to the members of the board. So the list is approved for 1 year. Thank you very much. Please, now we'll move to the financial statement on. So I'll give the floor to Bill Collins, so our new treasurer.
All right, thank you, Frank, and good afternoon, everyone. I think the best way to start this phase of the meeting is to say that this organization is in absolutely fantastic financial shape. As we go into the next slide, you can see that we ended 2020 in a positive position. In spite of the fact that the pandemic had a very significant impact on the revenues. But the organization responded accordingly with a reduction in expenses as well. As you can see in 2020, from a membership perspective, very strong continued support from our members. It's unfortunate that we weren't able to have the festival in person last year, which obviously had an impact. But one thing that you'll actually see very much on the next slide when we get to it is that we're really diversifying the revenue base. So we're not solely reliant on revenues only from membership or the festival, but we're growing the business services. So there's a more balanced mix of revenue, and you can see that phenomenal growth from 2019 to 2020. It's also worth noting that we have $51,000 of income from the grant. So this was a PPP loan, which at the end of last year or early this year was converted to an actual grant. So fantastic news for us. Then as we go into 2021, very strong start to the year in terms of memberships. Membership income is significantly higher than it has been in the last 2 years. So it's a great bounce back to the start of the year. The business services is already higher in the first 6 months of this year than what we did all of last year. So again, it's a great move in that direction. And spending is starting to increase, as you would expect. There's a huge amount of ambition within the organization in terms of really branching out and growing from a full Texas perspective. So there was an additional resource that was brought on board. So really a fantastic end to last year, given the unique circumstances, but a really strong rebound in the first part of this year as well. So if we could go to the next slide. You can see what I was talking about a minute ago in terms of the revenue distribution. And this is important. So, I mean, if you look at 2019, 64% events, 24% membership versus 2020 and the expectation going forward of a much more balanced set of revenue streams. Yes, events are still very important. The membership is critically important. But by being able to grow the business services, the French business classes, which I may have to take advantage of myself on that one, there's great opportunities for us to not be so reliant on one particular revenue stream. So it's great. Then if we move to the next slide, this is really a finance guy's dream. I mean, a huge cash position within the organization, significantly improved over the past 5 to 7 years, which really then means that the French American Chamber of Texas really has significant resources to really support not just the Houston community, but Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio, and Austin. So it's a really great position to be in, and we can start to invest in the outreach in those particular areas. So again, coming back to what I said initially, it's an organization that really is in fantastic financial shape with big ambitions on things that we want to tackle in the coming years. And I turn it back to you, Frank.
Thank you very much, Bill, for your presentation. And thank you, Vincent, for your comments. And so if we don't have any question about the financial statement, I turn over to Constance to present the activities. And the first, no, not only Constance, sorry. At first, we'd like to emphasize the fact that we have turned into FACC Texas at the beginning of this year. So I'll leave the floor to Marie-Hélène to give you a few words about this move.
Yeah, thank you, Frank. So effectively, I mean, what happened is that the FACC of Dallas decided to become European. And so that led a wide space for the French companies in Dallas, but also the companies in Dallas that wanted to increase their footprint in France to be served. And the FACC of Dallas was also serving an administrative purpose. They were providing visa to interns. So basically, all this mission, you know, had no one to be led by. So we decided to embrace, you know, this opportunity and think about, you know, serving Dallas as well. And at the same time, what happened is that we had the Austin French-American Business Council that decided to join us, and they said, why don't we, you know, join efforts together? So that's why the board started to think, hey, why don't we become, you know, FACC Texas? And I think we're very excited of this move today, because the Texas Triangle Secretary Cisneros was referring to. And so far, we decided to do that at constant number of staff. But as Bill mentioned, we are in a great financial shape, so we might, in the midterm, increase our staff to better serve this increased scope. So very excited to finally move our name from FACC Houston to FACC Texas.
Yes, and look, if I may just add a point there. First, Marie-Hélène, thank you for that excellent summary of this development. But I also want to thank Constance and Franck and Alexis for helping present this opportunity. It's really a set of opportunities, but to foster the situation where we could succeed in accomplishing this. So we've made some great strides towards our objectives. We have a lot more to do, but I think this is going to prove to be a transformative aspect of the FACC. And it's, you know, we've been around for many years as the FACC Houston. This is the brand new, very dynamic, expansive chapter. I think in 5 years, we're going to look back at this and say, wow, it's great that we seized this opportunity.
Absolutely.
Thank you, John. I fully agree with you, and that's a big step for the chamber, and so and a big challenge. So we have many things to do now. But the team is fantastic. So we have no doubt we will succeed in reaching out throughout Texas and help serve all the French companies in Texas. Constance,
Thank you.
I hand over to you.
Yes, and let me complete that by saying that it's a big step for us. But we already had some members in different cities in Texas, and we were already providing some services that were going on way beyond the borders of Houston. So it's kind of it's a new step, but it's a very natural process for our organization. So let me present you the activities of the last few months. First, I share the slide where you can see our members. We are a member-based organization, and everything we do is for our members. The membership is going well, and I'm very grateful to the support of our loyal members. As John was mentioning, we have been there for a very long time, and we have some very loyal members that are following us for many years. And we are also welcoming some new members. We have new members in Austin, in Dallas, and soon in San Antonio as well. So thank you very much to our members. I would like to highlight our services. I really want to highlight our services because it's now taking most of our time. The executive team is spending a lot of time on services, and it is not the most visible aspect of our job. Our members can receive a lot of emails about all the events we're organizing, but you may not see all the services that we are providing. So the first type of services that we are providing is business development. To put it simple, we help our members to find some clients. The second topic that is very interesting as well is all the services that we are providing regarding innovation. We are working with our members on specific technical issues, and we are leveraging our network to find some innovative solution. So to put it in a simple word, we are looking for startups in the US or in France or in Europe to find some innovative solution for our members. We have another service that we provide, which is some HR support. This is mostly dedicated to companies that are arriving in Texas and need some talents. So we leverage, again, our network to find the perfect talent for our members. And the last aspect of our service that is maybe the most well-known is what we do regarding communication and marketing. I would like as well to say thank you to the executive team, because all these services are done by a team of professionals. We have Lea Catanzano and Aurore Ladevez that are working on these business services on a daily basis. So thank you so much. And the results, the financial results that you saw that Bill presented are the reflection of their work. During the pandemic, we needed to grow our business services, and Lea launched the business French class program, and it's very successful. We had our full year, so June 2020 to June 2021. It was a success, and we are already enrolling for the new session. So you're more than welcome to join the class. We have an amazing teacher, and we realize how much this service was needed for our company in Texas. So this is the cover of our last magazine. It looked like a cover of Vogue, but no, it's our board member, Marianne Brelinski. Thank you very much, Marianne, for there is a very good and inspiring interview in the magazine. If you have not read it, I really recommend it. Okay, moving on to the events. So as I was saying at the beginning, that is the most visible aspect of our work. We host about 50 events a year. If you did not subscribe to our newsletter yet, I really invite you to do that. We cover a large variety of topics, and I'm pretty sure you will find some interesting topic for you. And I would like as well to highlight the quality of the event and speakers that we are able to secure. For that, I would like to thank John, Marie-Hélène, Frank, Alexis, for the quality of speakers that you are able to secure for our events. Coming in September, we have our Business Excellence Awards. I'm really excited about this big event because that will be the reflection of what we do regarding innovation. We will showcase all the innovation scene that is happening in Europe and in Texas on the specific topic of energy transition. This is a topic where France and Texas are really aligned and working together on finding innovation to tackle the energy transition. So it will be in September, hosted by Rice University. We have a keynote speaker that is Vincent Stockard, the CEO North America for Total Energies. It's a very must-attend event. It will be in person at Rice University, and we will also have some digital events the week of the event. Okay, so this is a description of the event. And now moving to the fun stuff. We are back to fun events, social events. The first one will be hosted with the French consulate. Thank you, Alexis, for that. So it will be for the Bastille Day. So it will be in Houston. We also are planning a Bastille Day in Austin. We will send the information by the end of the week. We are very excited. This will be the first large event inviting the whole American and French community to celebrate. So you are all welcome. And our traditional French festival that will be as well in person in November. So yeah, that's it. Thank you so much. And Franck, I give you the floor to conclude.
Thank you very much, Constance, for presentation and what you said about the upcoming events. And we hope that we will see a lot of friends.
If I may just, again, a compliment to our team, our staffers, Constance and Leah and Aurore. You know, I've witnessed and participated in many of these events over the past year, and there are many of them, but the quality is extremely high. So this takes a lot of work to organize these events. They've been very successful. This serves our membership. It serves the FACC by driving interest in joining. It serves our business community by presenting great topics with great speakers. So this is really doing a service to our communities as well as to the FACC, and it's a job well done.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, John. So we are reaching the end of our agenda. So I thank you all for participating today. I thank the speakers, and I send my special thanks to Alexis because we know that he will soon leave Houston. So I thank him a lot for his commitment in Houston to help the French team to grow and thrive. And I wish you all the best for the rest of your career, of course. But I hope that we will have many opportunities to come across in the future months and years. Alexis, I can give you the floor if you want, of course, to say a few words.
Merci beaucoup, Franck. I've already talked a lot, so you must be tired of me.
A pleasure.
No, it's been really a great, I would say, a great adventure with you, because I've been fortunate to see the chamber evolve, always moving forward. We've done many things together, and I think many steps that will also be useful for the future. I'd like to thank all your members, because I didn't mention it in my intervention, but each time I've had the opportunity before COVID to visit companies, it has been extremely interesting, and this has also fueled my my motivation to really get more interest in Texas and more interest in what you are doing in Texas. I think this is like this is not well enough known, the quality of the economic investment, French economic investment in Texas. So we managed to have Agnès Pannier-Runacher coming there in January 2020. Then COVID stopped everything, but it will just be a restart, I think, even more stronger in the coming months. And hopefully, maybe I will visit you again. We'll see. Just wait.
There is an offer from John.
Yes. The best of luck to you, Alexis, and please, please come back as soon as you can, and we will celebrate your return.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I propose, so it is time to close this meeting. So thank you all again for participating, and hope to see you soon in our events, the Bastille Day and also the business events.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
Ben.
everyone.
Thank you too.